And I would like to call the February 27, 2023 meeting of the Carver School Committee to order.
So just a reminder, this meeting is being held virtually in accordance with the Governor of Massachusetts March 12, 2020 order, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law. Members of the public can access the meeting online via Zoom, live on TV in Area 58, and also live at Town Hall in Meeting Room 1. So we'd like to start this evening with a recognition. So at this time, I'd please welcome Molly O'Connor up. Molly, if you can come up, that'd be great. You can take a seat at the table. Just for a second. So Molly was the MIA Student Athlete Award winner for the state of Massachusetts in September for 2022. The Massachusetts Interscholastic Athletic Association Student Athlete of the Month Award is presented on a monthly basis to 2 student athletes in the state who display excellence in the areas of academics, athletics, and community service. Students in grades 9 through 12 who attend MIA member schools are eligible to receive the award. Monthly award recipients receive a certificate of recognition, are featured on the MIA website, and also MIA social media platforms. Also, each recipient is eligible for the Harry Aganis Student Athlete of the Year Scholarship, provided on behalf of the Aganis family. This award is announced at the end of the year, so Molly's in that pool, and she was recognized in the state as one of 2 student athletes for September of 2022, which is just outstanding. Now, Molly was actually nominated by a teacher at the middle high school. So Molly, I'd like to take a second to read your nomination. Molly O'Connor, Carver Middle High School, nominated by Brian Wachowski, teacher at Carver Middle High School. Molly is one of the first students at Carver Middle High School to complete the biotechnology pathway, a robust series of core and elective courses and certifications to prepare students for career in the life sciences. Playing volleyball for 4 years, Molly has also completed in lacrosse, track, and basketball. A volunteer for the Walk for Hunger and the Congenital Heart Walk every year in Boston, Molly also raises money to sponsor a family each year for the Christmas holiday. As stated by Mr. Wachowski, Molly O'Connor exemplifies what it means to be engaged in the school and community. Her commitments to her teams, her studies, and her volunteering are commendable, and she does them not for the attention or the credit, because it's the right thing to do. So Molly, you've been an outstanding representative of the Carver Public Schools. We want to celebrate and acknowledge you being selected for this prestigious award of being one of 2 athletes within the state of Massachusetts recognized as the Student Athlete of the Month in September. So congratulations, Molly. If you want to come on up, we have a and then I'm guessing the committee was going to do a picture with you as well. Congratulate you. And then we'll give you an opportunity to say something if you want to say something. You don't have to. You don't have to. Don't need to say anything.
No pressure.
One, two, three. I'm going to do one more. 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
Congratulations, Molly. So Molly, I don't know if anybody wants to say anything else, or we'll just leave it at congratulations. I don't know if you want to say anything. You don't have to. No pressure. Nope.
Right.
All right. Well, Molly, congratulations. It's truly an honor and you've done a great job representing the Carver Public Schools. Thank you.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
I'm rooting for you to get that big scholarship.
Yeah.
Yep. That would
Keep
be
up the
amazing.
good work, Molly. We're super proud of you.
Okay, so that brings us to comments from the EAPC, and I know I saw Tammy online. I'm not sure.
I think Tom is
here
speaking this
also.
evening, so Tom is going
Hey,
to
Tom.
give Tom a second to make him a co-host. All right, Tom, you should be able to turn on your screen.
Oh, we cannot hear you, Tom.
There we go.
Yes.
There we go.
I had to change my setting up. I use a different speaker at the office and I'm home right now. So that had to be one Westerner. Technology, getting used to it. Plus advantages. So I hope everyone enjoyed break. Personally, we didn't do a whole lot, but I guess that was to be expected with a 2- and 5-year-old at home. But, we just spent some quality time around the yard and at the parks. I do tonight, don't have an update on my last comments I made at the last meeting regarding the HVAC and air quality testing. The company is able to come on April 10th. Obviously, we'll need to set up a time. But school for them to come, assuming after school, obviously. So just moving forward, I'll be working with the Health and Safety Committee, the district. I believe we'll need probably some blueprints and whatnot, and that's something I can get out to you, Scott, and whatnot, or through the committee. And as we move forward to the April 10th date, we can finalize plans to kind of get everything rolling. But Monday, I believe it's a Monday, April 10th is the date.
All right. Thank you, Tom.
Wanted to keep that up. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Tom.
That's great. Thank you. I think that was the shortest ever. Very, very concise. So that brings us to comments from the general public. So if there's anyone in the room that would like to speak, if you could please just come up to the table with the microphone and introduce yourself. Everyone's given 3 minutes. And also, if there's anyone that is participating on Zoom that would like to speak, you are more than welcome to. If you could just please put your name into the chat, and we'll give people a minute to do so. I think we have some participants online today. Okay, I have not seen any movement or anyone entering their name, so we will move on to the next item. Do we have Captain's Council?
We do. So Nolan Kaiser is here to represent the Captain's Council. Nolan is the hockey captain.
Great.
Nolan, welcome.
Welcome.
Start off with wrestling. Joey Tully won states at 160 pounds, and he placed second in all states. He will be competing in New England's this weekend. And his younger brother, Colson Tully, placed third in states at 106 pounds, and he competed at all states as a freshman.
Wow.
And for the winter track team, Cam Lane placed second for high jump in states. He's ranked number 2 in the entire state for high jump, and he will be competing in New England's this weekend. For basketball, on the boys basketball team, Charlie Condon, Tyler Lennox, and J.J. Grimes were all voted South Shore All-Stars. And for the girls team, Ashley Johnson was voted a South Shore All-Star. And both teams have made the tournament and will be playing this week. And the cheerleading had their first winter season, which went very well. Gymnastics had a very good season. And for ice hockey, over the break, Levon Mulready, a freshman from Carver, scored 2 overtime game winners on Saturday the 19th and Wednesday the 22nd, which secured our spot in the tournament. And all 3 towns are bonding well together, and it's very successful for a season as a tryout. And that's all.
That's excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for that update. Such good news.
Right? Yeah, congrats to all of our teams that are still competing. And
Yeah, so thank you for
Very
Nolan,
exciting.
and we hit on a couple things, and I wanted to give a couple updates just in terms of things that will be happening. So the mock trial team actually will be participating. They made the final 16, and they're going to be competing in their next round against Nauset tomorrow, weather permitting. The ice hockey team, as Nolan mentioned, their tournament game is Wednesday at 6:30 against Marlborough and Marlborough. The girls basketball team tournament game is going to be home on Thursday. I don't know if we've set a time yet, and they're going to 6 o'clock. And they're going to play the winner of Minuteman versus Hamden Charter School. Those 2 schools are actually playing tonight, so that game will get in. It's not weather dependent, so we'll know. So they'll play Thursday night. And boys basketball is a tournament game away, as Nolan mentioned. Their game is Thursday night at 5:30 against Fenway, and they're going to be playing at Madison Park High School. And then obviously Joe and Cam, we're excited about them being able to participate in all New England's in wrestling and track coming up this weekend. So a lot of exciting things happening in terms of sports and competitions and coming up in the next week. And our next meeting we'll come back and do some recognitions of our our winter all-stars and some of the kids who won at the state level.
Awesome.
excellent. Thank you.
Scott, I froze and had to restart, so if you can bring me
Oh,
back
sorry.
in. No, I just got it back up.
Good job.
My picture was froze like me, like this looked like I was praying. Isn't the worst position to be caught in, but it was a little awkward. And then I turned my camera off and then it wouldn't turn back on. Technology.
Struggling tonight.
Right?
Struggling.
Yeah. It happens. It's the pending storm, right? That's what it is. It's the atmospheric pressure. So
All
we're
right,
gonna
you should
go
be all
with.
set.
Okay,
You should-
so-
You should be back in and
All right,
turn your
so
camera.
Jen is
you.
back
I'm
in.
back.
Okay, so that brings us to the approval of minutes for the February 7th, 2023 open session.
Awesome. I will make a motion to approve the minutes from our February 7th, 2023 open session as presented.
I will second.
Excellent. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
It is unanimous. Thank you. And that brings us to their communications.
So there are no specific communications this evening, so I think that brings us into reports from the superintendent.
Excellent.
So for personnel updates, we have not had a lot of movement since our last meeting. So we do have 2 new hires, Amanda Kent as a tutor in the CAT program at Carver Middle High School. And we've hired a French teacher for next school year. Deb Kivi will be taking over as the French position to begin September of next year. We have had a couple of resignations since the last time we met. Paul Reed is an ESP at Carver Middle High School. Megan McGann as an adjustment counselor at the elementary school. And John Scarafoni as a custodian at the elementary school. And that's our personnel update since last meeting.
Thank you very much. And that brings us to,
Budget. So we're going to go right into the public hearing of the budget, which is our main topic tonight.
yes.
And I'll turn to Ron.
Thank you, Ron.
Thank you, guys. So the superintendent Neath pulls up the presentation. I guess I'll just start by saying it's very similar to what you've seen for the past 3 months. So I'm going to highlight some of the changes from last meeting to this meeting, but I won't perseverate on the items
You know
that are identical.
Can you use a microphone?
Oh,
Which we
sorry.
have to, so the people on Zoom
Yep.
can hear you, just in case. I didn't get a comment yet, but I'm
There we go.
anticipating one. Thank you.
Sorry about that. Forgot about that. So as I was saying, so it's the same information for the most part that you've seen for the past few months. Some very minor changes across a couple of our cost centers. So I'll just highlight some of those major changes and I'll move through items that you've already seen before, data analysis, charts you've already seen before. But stop me if you have any questions on anything either previously or anything new here. So budget calendar, you've seen this before. We're here on February 27th. We're at the end. We're close to the end of the process, which is great. All right. If you look at your summary presentation, again, we'll overview the expenses first, then we'll do revenue, and then I'll roll it up together and give you a highlight of everything. A reminder of our priorities remain the same: maintain services for our kiddos, focus on our educational blueprint, support the pathways, and then return to some of that pre-pandemic funding and service levels we talked about. I won't go over the operating overview. You know how it's structured. We've done that a few times. And I'll hop right into each cost series. So your 1,000 series is your district-wide leadership. Literally no changes from our last meeting on February 7th. Everything remains the same. 717 is your full roll-up for your 1,000. Your 2,000 series, a couple of minor changes. I've got 2 slides on it. Your first is just a reminder that it still reflects our support of level 1 supplies, obviously, reflects all of our CBA agreements, FY24 staffing levels, steps, lanes across all the CBAs. It does bring us back to the pre-COVID funding and staffing levels. So you see some of the code positions that we showed you at the February 7th meeting. That all remains the same coming off the books in FY24. If you go to the second slide, please. The only major changes we have from our February 7th meeting is there is a increase in our middle high school ELL instructor position from half-time to a 0.75, and that's just reflective of increases in ELL enrollments. So we try to keep that in proportion with the ELL staff, ELL service needs. We're also able to purchase some middle high school social studies texts as well as some elementary math texts this spring. We have some grant funding for that, so that gets us out ahead, which is nice. And we've identified some small cost savings for SPED testing, and that's just because every month we get better actuals on what our projections are going to be.
Okay.
Do you mind if I hop in on one piece of this? Okay. Is just in terms of, just to give a little more clarity around that concept of returning to pre-pandemic levels. So, I think the fact that some of the interventionist positions, which are COVID positions as ESPs, are being reduced or pulled out of this budget, that doesn't mean there will not be intervention at the elementary school next year. So we'll have the same level of interventionist staff that we had prior to the pandemic, which in reading is a reading coach and 2 full-time reading specialists and a part-time reading specialist. And then in math, we'll have a math coach and 2 part-time math paras, which was our staffing prior to COVID. So we're just returning to that same level of staffing. We're working on our plan for what intervention will look like next year. That always actually varies from year to year. It's always, we get the input of teachers, we have to look at the students' data, and the plan would be to make a formalized presentation this spring on what intervention will look like at the elementary school next year with this staff.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
If you look at the 3000 series, yep, that's your support and other services. Again, very much the same as what we talked about on February 7th. The minor adjustment we have here is related to transportation service. So as you'll see in the 9000 series, we'll get to in a few slides, we do have an uptick in out-of-district services. We also have an uptick in homeless and displaced student services right now as well. And those typically require additional transportation. So we've added an additional driver to our 3000 series to sort of compensate for that. Otherwise, what happens is the school department has to contract service that cost out, and you're going to pay typically a premium on that rather than doing it in-house. We have the vehicles, we just need the drivers for that. So that is the increase that you see there. Your 4000 series operations, 0 changes from the last couple of meetings we've had. That's been one of our most consistent cost centers, so no changes there from the February 7th meeting. Your 5000 series, very light change from meeting to meeting. Again, as a reminder, FY23 was the first year that the health insurance was consolidated on the town side of our ledger, if you will. The only adjustment that we're seeing here is our liability insurance has come down just a little bit ahead at 10%. We finally got our firm estimate from the vendor. It's down to 6%. So
Okay, great.
it gives you a little bit of savings, which is nice.
Yeah.
And then your 9000 series, as I mentioned at the last meeting, this is really where you've seen the most movement year to year, at least from 23 to 24. February 1, again, as a reminder, is really where we have the line in the sand for our projections for out-of-district services. As I mentioned at our last meeting as well, this is really the place where you always see the most volatility, and it's also one of the most challenging items to be able to project effectively. We use that February 1 line in the sand as a way to just have consistency with our dollars and cents, with the understanding that if we do see any unanticipated additional costs in our district, we would lean on the special education reserve to cover that in 1 year, and then the following year we budget for it, knowing that we'd also be getting circuit breaker support from the state there. Yeah. The other change, I'm sorry, for the 9000 series from our last meeting, we did get the Norfolk Aggie voted tuition that came in. I was working on just a projection. It saved you a little better than $3,000 because I was projecting conservatively, but now I had the actual, so I rolled that in there for us. So I think it's 0.2% is your total savings, but the closer we get, we try to give you as most accurate as we can.
Every
little
dollar
bit
counts.
helps.
Yeah,
Exactly.
we'll take it, right?
Yep.
Yeah, again, a lot of the same things. I guess the only thing I'll say there on the 9000 series, I mentioned at the last meeting, as a reminder, so the statewide increase in private out-of-district special education costs is up 14%, which is tremendous. That's the cost of doing business right now. OSD runs that. We don't run that, state-driven. But I think Superintendent Neef mentioned this at our last meeting. A group of superintendents and group of business managers around the state have been advocating to DESE and to statewide in general, so like the state government officials who will listen, to consider some kind of support to school districts. 14% is just a very challenging increase to absorb. So no new news on that, but the advocacy continues, at least behind the scenes, and we're hopeful to hear something as Chapter 70 gets finalized across the state.
Yeah, MISC is also advocating on that.
Your summary, again, is very similar. You're 0.1% different from our last meeting. You see the roll up there. Total cost all in, $573,715. As a note, again, that's prior to your budget offsets, which we'll go into next. Analysis is very much the same. No changes in your proportional analysis. And I might go on to revenue now. So again, as a reminder, our revenue here in Carver, I think we're fortunate in the fact that we have a combined effort to develop projected revenue costs for each year. Not every school district has a projected revenue that combines all of your resources and then pulls out all of the shared costs. So in that regard, what I'll do is I'll show you your Chapter 70 and local contribution as one bucket of money, and then we'll talk about the expense from there. So your FY24 Chapter 70 local contribution combined, you're at $22,500,218. That's a 5.1% increase. It's a very supportive local and Chapter 70 contribution for the community of Carver. A couple of items to keep in the back of your mind. Your health insurance is projected at only 3% increase year to year. That's a huge support for everybody. So town department, school department, you name it. Because ultimately, now that's a shared cost, the lower that cost is, the more revenue is available to be used for servicing our community in a variety of ways. So that's probably your biggest win, if you will, when you think about revenue. We can't promise that happens every year, but that's a huge success for FY24. Your next slide, again, tells you a little bit more about that, just gives you a reminder of the increasing distance between the Chapter 70 aid, which has been relatively consistent year to year, a little over $10 million, and the local contribution. And again, that's a function of the fact that Carver Schools typically hasn't received a large increase in Chapter 70 aid. And if you go to our next slide, I'll bring your attention to a little more about that. So you probably saw a lot of information coming out regarding the governor's H1, House 1 proposal, which is the initial proposal, includes Chapter 70 along with everything else in state government. DESE has a hold harmless provision in there which provides this minimum increase for Chapter 70. And Carver currently is within the parameters to have the hold harmless provision, which is that minimum increase. Ultimately, that means your Chapter 70 increase doesn't grow very much year to year, which is why you saw that flat line for that blue line representing Chapter 70. Enrollment is one of the big drivers for that. You can see your enrollment from 1996 to 2022. That's the most recent data that they have. Ultimately, Carver, like many school districts in the Commonwealth, has declining enrollment. If you've got declining enrollment, you're not really able to capitalize on that SOA growth dramatically.
Right.
That slide does a nice job of transitioning us to the talk about annual offsets. So one benefit you do have to your enrollment is that you're a school choice school district. And so you're able to offset some of your decline in enrollment with school choice students who choice in from other communities. And there's a small fee that they pay to our school department to provide those services. That's one of our annual offsets. And for this year, you've got about $400,000 in projected school choice revenue. This next slide just shows you the remainder of those annual offsets. Again, there's no changes on this slide from our previous meeting to this one. And I'll just remind you that our annual offsets are typically reliable funding streams we expect every year, year to year. The other kind of revenue offset you have is your one-time offsets. Again, there's no changes from our previous meeting to this meeting on our one-time offset projections. I'll just underscore that we're starting to come down from that COVID revenue infusion. And so you can see we've reduced our one-time annual offsets by a little over 40%. In FY25, we'll have to continue to do that. So I just want to flag that for you for the future. This last slide, again, no change from your previous meeting. That graph on the right, I like that sort of stacked bar graph is nice. I'm a nerd for stacked bar graphs, I guess. But essentially that blue part of the bar graph, that's the large majority of where your revenue comes from. That's local and state aid. That's going to be the meat and potatoes of your revenue year after year. Your annual offsets is that nice dark bar on top of it. Again, you should expect that revenue to come in, change it a little bit, but you expect that to come in. And that small little gray bar at the very top of those one-time offsets. You think of those like the icing on the cake. You want to have a little bit of icing, but you don't want to expect the icing to be, running the show. So our goal is to keep bringing that down year after year, and we'll expect to do that again in 2025. Your operating budget roll-up is there in front of you. You can see you've got a fully balanced budget for FY24. I think last time we talked, you had a balance of the better part of $17,000. With those adjustments that we talked, we sort of absorbed those, the large majority of which goes to the bus driving services and your ELL services, which makes sense. Again, we're still utilizing some of those one-time funds, and our goal in 25 will be to bring that down even further. We'll expect that 25 will probably be a pretty challenging year. Revenue projections in 25 don't look like there's going to be any big spikes in revenue, and we'll be bringing some of that one-time funding off the books as well. I know that was a relatively quick walkthrough of it, but again, not a whole lot has changed from our February 7th meeting. My request to the board today will be to vote the local budget appropriation. It's $22,500,218.00. If the board votes that today, the final appropriation will be voted at town meeting, and our budget will begin on July 1. That said, I'm happy to answer any questions that you've got, all things budget.
I have a question. At one point, we thought we were going to have a shortfall and we were going to have to transfer money out of, is the account, remind me, is it like school choice or out of district funding? There's,
Probably special education reserve because
or maybe, is it the
got
sped
such a
reserve
spike
that
this year.
was around 900?
Yeah.
So we don't need to actually take anything out of there now to cover the budget, correct? So this is good news.
That's really good news. Yeah, so this budget appropriation to 22.5 covers your full cost of operating the school department, with the understanding that it's also going to require you to utilize some of those one-time funds for FY24.
Do we have the balance that's in that reserve account?
We do for the special education reserve.
Yeah.
Give me 1 second. I've got my big budget binder here. Bear with me. I believe it's 450, and I'm not seeing it here, but let me.
I'm sorry, you can get it to me later. I was just curious.
Actually, don't have it on my report here, but I'll email it to you. I want to say it's 450.
Yeah, it's around that area.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll get you a firm number on that. Sorry about that.
And remember, that special ed reserve is an account that we could use if we had new special ed costs that came online after February 1st.
Correct.
Next year.
Right, yeah, and those costs can vary widely and they're very hard to predict.
Correct, absolutely.
Which is why we were disdained that we thought we were going to have to use some of the money to cover the budget. So I'm really happy that we don't need to.
That's
great.
Great job, Ron.
Thank you.
Working those numbers.
Brian.
Great to save it. So I'm assuming moving forward as the governor's budget develops, if there's any way that we're going to benefit, that will be discussed at future meetings.
Yes, so one of the benefits, if you could go back, Scott, just for a second to.
People haven't been inquiring because people are excited that it appears that, education is going to get a bump. So people have been asking what the benefit, of course, to Carver and then to the district will be.
Yeah, if you could just go to the roll-up for just a second, the full roll-up, if you don't mind. It's just one slide
it's
back
complicated.
from the very last slide.
Yes, sir.
So I'll start it, and maybe Mr. Neef wants to throw something in. Do you want to start it?
You can go first.
Okay.
That'll help.
So-
If I need to.
As I just said with the revenue, one of the benefits that Carver has is that you have a combined revenue projection. That is, you take all of the projected revenue, you set a number, and then you back out some of the shared costs, and you land on, in our case, $22,500,000, $218. Right, that's your appropriation. That sets conservatively the Chapter 70 proportion. Typically, at least the past 20 years I've been in education, the House 1, that first proposal that the governor puts forward, is the floor, right? Could it go up and down? Absolutely. Almost never goes down. Sometimes it does go up. That said, if it does go up, that would still be our proportionate number, $22,500,218. The additional funding wouldn't become a benefit to us until FY25, right? We'd use the previous year's number as the base and then ultimately build on it from there. Any additional funds would go into free cash. The town would then appropriate it accordingly as you saw fit in your next town meeting. So there's sort of pros and cons to that. I guess the last thing I would just say is that model, while you may think, oh gosh, we wish we had a little bit more money, or what if that Chapter 70 bump is more significant? Couldn't we get some of that, right? That's an initial knee-jerk reaction. I recognize it, but I would say the benefits of having this collaborative model wildly outweigh any small addition that you might get in Chapter 70, because the inverse is true. In the unlikely event your revenues came in short for whatever reason, that's still your number.
Thank you for that explanation. Like I said, I've gotten a few questions from people, so I wanted to make sure to have you explain it for those who are on Zoom.
No, the only thing I was going to add in is that there are a couple things that are still out there that we'll see what happens. Like, for example, Ron talked about the 14% for the
Yes.
increase in
Yeah.
special
Yeah.
ed costs. There is a discussion that the state's going to put in some mechanism to cover those costs.
Okay.
That may not be through Chapter 70, that could be through Circuit
House.
Breaker. So if it was done through Circuit Breaker or through some other mechanism, that money may come directly to the school district, which would then be a benefit for us. But in terms of big picture number, that would be a small portion, but it could be money that could come directly to the school district.
Okay.
And then the other piece would be, we're going to probably trigger what's called extraordinary relief next year. We didn't get into this too much, but when we look at that 9,000 series and how high it is, because we said our costs went up there just because the reality of we had some students who were going out of district. I'm trying to find the 9,000 series. Right, that 25.3% increase. There's actually a mechanism called extraordinary relief that if you have a year where your special ed costs go up a certain amount, the state will actually reimburse a portion of that. So we're most likely going to trigger that. We wouldn't know that until next year, and we're going to have to apply for that. So we're going to have to look at that, and we're going to have to apply for it. But that may bring some additional revenue in for next year. So those are, but in terms of the big picture, in terms of Chapter 70, it's not going to see a change in FY24 for us.
Okay. Thank you. Like I said, I wanted that clarity for.
And I guess the last piece of clarity would be on terms of SOA funding.
Yes.
Because there's a lot of discussion about the amount of money that's been going to SOA. It goes back to that whole concept again of of our district being held harmless.
Yeah.
And that we have had so the districts that have either maintained their student population or have had their student population grow have received a much larger share of the SOA funding. So I think there was some discussion in the governor's original budget of don't quote me on the exact number, 600 million, I think was the number statewide going into SOA. Carver's going to see a really small piece of that because we're still in that held harmless position.
Right.
So we're still really just getting the minimum aid with some escalators on our EL students, our special ed students, low-income students. So there is some pieces there, but in terms of how much our Chapter 78 is going to go up, probably not going to be dramatic.
Right.
Quick question. So this time last year, I think we were talking about this, if the governor had passed or hadn't passed the free lunch program. Do we have any news on what's happening with that? Because I know that last year we were talking about raising food prices for our kiddos until they put that back in place. So no news on that.
Nothing's been finalized for 24.
Okay.
I will say one of the things to keep in the back of your mind is you do have the gift of time in that your food service program operating budget is separate from your regular school department operating budget. It's a self-funding mechanism, right? So it brings in money from a combination of school meal costs that your kiddos pay for lunches, state and federal funding, and it's got to balance even every year. So we have more time for the state to sort that out,
Yeah.
but I haven't heard any timeline in terms of some line in the sand the state has set for itself.
Okay. And one point of clarification, as Scott mentioned, we are going back to pre-pandemic staffing levels. So, I mean, that is something that I just think maybe need to be a little bit clarified, that those positions that are not being renewed because we're not having the ESSER funds anymore are temporary positions, and they were always slated to be temporary positions.
There are COVID-specific positions.
Wonderful, thank you.
Yeah, and people were hired with that understanding.
That's what I wanted
Yes,
clarification
yeah.
on.
Nothing else?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ron.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, as always. Thank you. So, with that,
I'll make a motion to approve the budget as presented, with our net costs being $22,500,000. Scrolling back down, $218.
I will second.
okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ron, for all your work. Appreciate it.
Yes, I
Thanks,
love
Ron.
those stacked bar graphs personally, right? Graphs are great.
Love graphs, love a balanced
So-
budget, all the things
Love
that
it,
make
love
me
it.
Right,
happy.
all the things.
The accountant in me is giving you 2 thumbs up. Yes, Leonard.
I'm right there with you, so I appreciate it. I like I appreciate it, so transparency is key.
And moving on to upcoming events, if that's okay.
Yes.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
please do.
And so we've already talked about some of the exciting things that are going to be happening this week with our teams and our clubs and organizations. But we'll just point out some things that are coming up for the committee in the next month, really the month of March. Something we have talked about a lot in the past. There are going to be, so the Massachusetts Aggression Reduction Center, is going to be doing anti-bullying presentations at the middle high school coming up this week. So they will be presenting to our students. So we wanted to make the community aware that we will be having those anti-bullying presentations from the Massachusetts Aggression Reduction Center this week. We have the elementary school has Red Day coming up, which is to wear red in support of deployed military. So that is this Friday.
Love
So we'll
it.
be encouraging people to wear red. Event that's coming back on Friday is Senior Night. They're doing it a little bit differently. So we haven't done senior lock-in since the pandemic. So we're not doing it as a full senior lock-in overnight, but they decided to do it as a 6 to midnight event. So that will be seniors only in the building, doing all kinds of fun events from 6 p.m. till midnight on Friday night. I'm not going to read everything here that's on the list, but I just wanted to highlight some of those things that are coming up. We have some, and the other two I just want to mention is the elementary school drama club has the Aristocats coming up on March 16th and 17th at 6:30, and the middle high school drama club has Cinderella coming up
I think it's the 24th and 25th.
on the 24th and 25th.
Yeah.
So we have Cinderella on the 24th and 25th, and we have Aristocats for our drama productions coming up.
Excited.
Very exciting.
But just a lot of great things. March is the longest month of the year, and I think everybody tends to feel that. March is generally, the day it's the month that doesn't have any breaks. But maybe we'll finish February with some sort of reduced day or something tomorrow. I know everybody's looking forward to that. We'll see. We'll see what happens. A lot of great stuff coming up over the next month.
Wonderful.
Sure, go absolutely.
So, Ms. Pratt, just you asked about the sped reserve, and I didn't have it in my binder, but I wanted to pull it up for you. Your current sped reserve, 504, 853 and 38 cents.
Thank you, Ron.
Thanks, Ron. No, not a problem.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Okay, so that brings us to
To-
recommendations from the superintendent.
So the Reed's Collaborative Agreement.
Yep.
So the Reed's Collaborative, which we're a member of, Board of Directors, has unanimously approved changes to the collaborative agreement between the participating members. So there's an agreement between all the towns that participate, kind of sets the rules and the guidelines. The revisions to the document were proposed by the Executive Director Teresa Craig, in consultation with their attorneys and with DESI. Revisions to the agreement need to be approved by the member school district committees as well. So this document has to be brought before you and beyond the board of directors. And the board of directors is generally the superintendent of the school district that's part of the collaborative. Each individual school committee for the towns that participate also need to approve the collaborative agreement for it to move forward. So I'm not going to take you through every single change word by word, but I just wanted to highlight some of the key ones before the committee. And then I'd be looking for, I'd be recommending a motion and a vote to approve the collaborative agreement And then if the committee does do that, Stephanie could sign it off and move that process forward. So on page 2, the changes are actually in pink or purple. I guess it's purple. I'll go with purple. The changes are in purple. And, like I said, I'm not going to go through every change, and specifically we'll just give an overview. So on page 2, there's just some general language changes to the mission, objectives, focuses, and purposes of the board of directors. It's really just streamlined and really a little bit of updated language, including a little bit of a focus on the development of social emotional skills. And if at any point you want me to stop and you have a specific question about a change that's up there, you can certainly ask. Moving on to page 3. Okay. Page 3 under governance. It really updated the process for selecting the board of directors. But the process that's outlined here is actually the process that they've followed since I've been superintendent. So I've been on the Reed's Board of Directors for 7 years. This is what we do. This is how we select the board and appoint the board. It just wasn't what was actually written in the document. So having gone through this, I have served as president and vice president and secretary. So number 4, the board shall annually elect and appoint an executive committee, which shall consist of a president, vice president, secretary. In successive years, the vice president moves up to become president. So everybody, in essence, really what it becomes, everybody gets to rotate through the role of being president. And that has, as I said, the document just didn't reflect what was actually occurring. Moving on to page 6. In terms of under the financial terms, currently the agreement states that non-member districts would pay 15% more for services offered by the collaborative. The new agreement states the board will set the percentage annually not to exceed 25% more for costs for non-members. So there's member districts and non-member districts. If you're a member district, you pay a certain amount for students to attend there, for services, for testing, for any service, counseling services they offer. So any service you offer has a member price. And right now, it's just automatic that the non-member price is 15% more. And they want to make it so that the agreement would be set that percentage would be set annually by the board based on the needs. Looking at the district and saying, what are our costs? What are we incurring? What do we need to do? Maybe it has to be a little bit more, a little bit less, and that it would not exceed 25% of non-member costs. On page 7 and 8, there's a discussion about the cumulative surplus, which is the amount of money that they're allowed to roll over. So the collaborative is able to maintain a surplus, and there's very specific guidelines under state law of what they need to do that. So the update in the language here has just been updated to reflect Mass General Law and recommendations from DESE. So they got this language right from legal counsel and from DESE in terms of what the rules and regulations are around how much money the collaborative is able to maintain as a surplus over time. Number 11 is actually probably the biggest. They wanted to update this agreement, but number 11 is kind of the issue that's at hand. I said number 11, the piece on page 11, which is about new member districts. Currently, to add a new member district requires a unanimous vote of the board of directors and also unanimous vote of all the school committees. They felt, the general feeling is that is a tough hurdle to overcome. To have all the superintendents vote in favor of it, then bring back to all the school committees and have all the school committees vote. So the new language would require a unanimous vote of the board of directors, but only a 2/3 vote of the member district school committees. Why this is currently an issue is there are a couple districts that are looking to join the collaborative. So there are 2 districts who've made an application to join the collaborative. From my perspective, adding districts is a positive thing because generally the districts involved in the collaborative have more of a stake in the collaborative and are regularly sending students. Where it becomes a little bit, where it can become a pinch point, if you really think about it, is if they're already using a lot of the services of the collaborative as a non-member, they're paying more.
Right.
So you could see the school committee say, well, if this district is already using our services, maybe we don't want them to be a member.
Right.
Because they get charged more money to be a non-member.
Right.
And that's why that district is saying, well, we're really utilizing so much of your services, maybe it makes sense for us to join the group, and we want to be part of it. So the general feeling was having a unanimous vote of the board of directors and all the school committees may be a hurdle that districts may not be able to overcome. So they're looking to lower the bar there a little bit and give that opportunity for a new if a new member was to join, that it would just be a unanimous vote of the board and 2/3 of the school committees. And as I said, there are currently two districts that are interested. And if this collaborative agreement is approved, I think those districts may go forward and apply to become members. So that would be coming back to this board probably next year, maybe maybe June or July, maybe beginning of next year, in terms of adding a couple districts to the Reed's Collaborative. And then the last big change is just at the end, is under number 13, procedures to terminate the collaborative agreement. And again, they've just updated the language to align with their council's recommendations and DESI recommendations. So in my mind, the most substantive changes here are the piece around non-members, that, that they would set the percentage that they'd be charged for services annually, and that we are lowering the threshold a little bit to admit new members. As I said, these changes were recommended by the executive director, and they were voted unanimously in support of by the board. And so now we're bringing it back out to each committee. So my recommendation would be that the committee approve the changes to the collaborative agreement as presented. And I'll take any questions you might have.
Great. That was a lot. Anyone have any questions?
Make a motion?
Right. That'd be great.
Okay, I will make a motion to approve the changes to the Reed's Collaborative Agreement as presented.
I will second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
All right,
Scott?
thank you very much.
Thank you, Scott.
All right, policy. So a little bit upset. We have a second reading tonight of policy sections E and F, and a first reading of policy sections G and H. So we'll do the second reading first. Again, the changes to this section were pretty straightforward. The major change for E and F is that we were going to be striking some policies. And so I'll do a little bit of review of the policies that we would be looking to strike. There are two policies here that are still under consideration.
Okay.
So we're still working on them. One was policy EBBA, the AED or automated external defibrillator policy, and policy ECAF was the security cameras in schools. So myself and Karen Schoen are working on the AED policy, and the security cameras in school policy has gone to legal counsel for review. So they're still we're not done with those. We'll look to bring those back. So at the end, if we do make a motion to approve E and F, it would be with the exception of those two policies. In section E, we removed policy EBCA, that's the recommendation, which is an emergency care plan. We removed policy EBCC, which was about a bomb threat, which really laid out the procedures that we would take in the case of a bomb threat. And I said at the time, this is a document that's actually part of our emergency response plans that we have. It's procedures that staff know and are aware of, not necessarily appropriate as a policy. And we're going to look to remove policy EEAECR, which about student conduct on buses, feeling that the pieces in the policy were covered in other policies that we had. And then in section F, we were actually removing two policies as well, which was policy FA-E, facilities development goal, and also policy FB, facilities planning. So those are really the major changes. Obviously, Jen and Stephanie as members of the subcommittee. I don't know if you want to talk any more about sections E and F.
They were really straightforward. There wasn't a whole lot of changes. They were, the policies governing support services and facilities development, and the ones that we're removing, it makes sense to remove. I don't think it's good to have in your public policy manual your bomb threat response.
Exactly.
Right?
So yeah, there was nothing super exciting in these. It was very straightforward.
Yes, this was, as Jen and Mr. Neef have both said, they were very straightforward, so easy decisions for your consideration.
I have all of it here if anyone has any.
Yes, if anyone has any questions, we're more than happy to answer them for you. Okay, seeing none, do you want to make any of the motions on the background agenda?
Sure. I will move to approve section E and F of the policy manual with the exception of policy EBBA, automated external defibrillators, and policy ECAF, security cameras in schools, in form as presented.
I will second.
Excellent, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Two more sections.
So, and
checked off
we
the
are
list.
moving along in this process.
Yes. We are.
Our next first reading is going to be a really large section.
Yes.
On all about students, actually.
Yes.
So having some students here in the audience, it's the whole section. Next section is all about students. First reading of policy sections G and H. Section H was small with minimal changes. Sections G had a few changes and several policies that we currently do not have. I'm going to highlight some of the key recommended changes. Again, on this, no action is required tonight, and we'll bring these two sections back for a second reading in our next meeting. So as I said, Section G, really, I have nothing to highlight from Section G, but it's there for you in your background if you want to take a look at it. Sorry, that was backwards. I don't have any highlighted changes
For
for
H.
Section H. H was really small. We have a few highlighted changes for Section G.
G.
I had it backwards in my own notes here. Sorry about that. So, first, for Section G, Policy GA, Personnel Policy Goals, we were looking to delete or strike that policy. Policy GBD, School Committee and Staff Communications. We were recommending to delete this policy. And the reason why, it's actually a duplicate policy. It's the exact same policy that we've already approved, Policy BHC. It was just in the staff section of the handbook. I'm sorry, it was in the school committee section of the handbook. So there's a school committee section and a staff section. Since this policy was school committee and staff communications, we had it in both sections. We said that doesn't really make sense to have it. We only need it once, we don't need it twice. Policy GBEBBA-E, it's a long policy. Educator ethics and protocols, protect yourself, healthy boundaries for educators. This policy we're going to look to revise really talks about expected boundaries or professional boundaries for our staff in terms of relation of their interactions with students. There's just some language in there that's a little outdated. The one I always like to reference is that I think it references MySpace. So MySpace and connecting with people on MySpace is probably an outdated reference. And
Probably you don't even know what
Yeah.
MySpace is.
they know they've heard of it somewhere. They've heard
It was
somewhere.
OG Facebook.
OG Facebook.
So we're gonna update some of just the outdated references, and because this is really about
I don't use Facebook.
I know.
the focus of this policy is really about how staff interact with students. We also are going to send this one for Rebecca for review, so that our attorney will take a look at the revisions that we make. Policy GBEBD, online fundraisers and solicitors crowdfunding. This is a policy we don't have, but it's very that we're very interested in enacting. So we're gonna. It is the policy from Mass.
Yeah.
It establishes that all online fundraising must be approved by the superintendent. It will also govern how staff use online fundraising sites like Donors Choose or GoFundMe. So it establishes some parameters around staff going out and doing their own kind of fundraising through, as the phrase of crowdfunding and those different types of sites. And I do think that right now, some of that happens without the central office or the school being aware that those things are occurring. So this policy was very specific around the guidelines and the roles that teachers can do to use those types of sites. Policy GBEC, drug-free workplace. This is a policy we did not have, but looking at the mass version of it, we felt it was appropriate and a strong statement about maintaining a drug-free workplace for all of our staff. Policy GBGE, domestic violence leave policy. This also is a policy we did not have that we'd like to add the MASC version. The domestic violence leave policy is actually, it is law that I believe was enacted a couple of years ago, 2 years ago. And so basically guarantees anybody who's a victim of domestic violence, guarantees them time off, similar to a specific amount of time. I believe it's actually 15 days. And so this is a policy we do not have in place, but we would recommend the committee adopt. Policy GBGF, the family and medical leave policy. We'd like to suggest recommending the MASC version, which is actually much shorter. Our old policy was really a procedure document and almost just rewrote the law. The MASC policy just says we will comply with the Family Medical Leave Act. It's a shorter statement, very clear, saying, yes, we're going to follow all the expectations of FMLA. Policy GCBB, employment of principals. We do not have this policy, but we're taking the MASC recommendation to add it. And I think that is it for the highlights of the changes in Section G, with most of our changes in Section G actually being based around adding some policies that we probably should have in place that we do not have in place. I'll take any questions from the committee, but we don't need to take any action tonight because this is the first reading, and everything's in your background. You'll have the opportunity to look at it, and we'll bring it back for a vote at our next meeting.
Actually, so the only one that I would add
Okay,
that
go ahead.
isn't
Yep.
here, so at the end, in case anyone's curious on how this works, MASC is looking at our policies and then they look at what their policies. If they have a policy that's similar to ours, they'll either, say your policy matches ours. We've been updating all of our policies to like generalized pronouns and, refer to, instead of saying like children, students, different, more current terminology that's appropriate. But then there are times that they have a policy that we don't have that they'll bring to us for recommendation, or we have a policy that they don't have that they'll question whether we need to. In some instances, like that educator ethics protocol, like that's our policy that MASC doesn't have, but we have very good reason for wanting to keep that. There was a whole section in G, which is what made this so huge, is that there was this whole section at the end of a bunch of policies that MASC recommended school districts have, but it was really for school districts that don't have contracts. So the bulk of those policies, we said we don't need to adopt these because they're covered by our contract. But two of them we did bring in, which was professional staff positions and employment of principals, simply because not 100% of our staff are covered by a contract. So that employment of staff, because when we first went over this, we were like, well, professional staff positions, this doesn't make sense because we have our contracts, but it's for like the tiny percentage of people that wouldn't be covered. So I just wanted to add that. But when it comes to like family medical leave, their domestic leave, and some of the other ones where we're going to the MASC version instead of our version, a lot of theirs were a lot more concise and refer to the laws, which is better than actually stating the law. Because if you state the law, then every time the law changes, you have to update your policy. Whereas if you just refer to the law, it inherently gets updated as the law changes. And if anybody follows FMLA, it changes quite regularly.
It does.
So it's good to not actually quote that. So that would just be my added 2 cents on this super fun personnel section.
Perfect.
Thank you for
Thank
that.
you. Makes sense.
Yeah, it's been quite the process, but I'm so thankful that we're going through it, as most of these policies haven't been updated since 2000. So I'm looking forward to when we have a nice, neat package at the end to approve in full. Thank you for that. Okay, so that brings us to legislative liaison.
Yep, so at our last meeting, the committee agreed to discuss and possibly appoint a member of the committee as a legislative liaison. So obviously, I'll leave that to your discussion.
Correct. This was something that I had raised, as it's actually in one of our policies that we currently have, along with having a representative to MASC for our committee. They request that districts have an MASC liaison so that as elections happen and as rules change on school committees, that person can make sure that information is updated with MASC, so that way new members are receiving all the new information that they need, and then old members are taken off the mailing list. Even though, I mean, someone could choose to stay if they decide to not be on the school committee anymore, but, so that's part of that process. So that was why I brought it to the committee, because we haven't designated someone, at least in the 6 years that I've been here, so. Especially with, I know MASC is doing advocacy with the mass superintendents, and with some other groups to try to, address the 14% increase for sped tuition. So I think it would be great to have someone that would, keep the committee informed in those types of developments. So that's my 2-cent spiel.
Okay.
Does anyone have any thoughts?
I think we need it.
Okay.
I think we need it.
Is there anybody who would be interested in serving in this role? At least Daphne expressed an interest.
I did last time, but is there anyone else that would like to do this?
I think you should take it.
Well,
I make a
Stephanie would be
motion to
great.
nominate Stephanie Clordy as our legislative liaison.
if you were gonna do what I was, I'll second that.
I know, I was like, she's going on her own.
I was waiting.
I know, I usually Jenny. So we have a motion.
Okay,
and a
sorry, we
second.
have a sorry. I was asleep for a second.
We're having a night.
Sorry, so we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
No.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. I promise I will do a good job in keeping the committee updated. I actually have my very first meeting of the MASC Legislative Committee on Thursday night. So at our next meeting, I will have some information to share, and I will forward any new briefings that they share with me, with the rest of the committee.
No doubt
So-
you'll do us proud.
I will do my best. Thank you. So that brings us to reports from the school committee. See, look at that. What time is it?
8:05.
8:03. I predicted 9:30. So, anyone have anything they'd like to report?
I will start with I'll give you guys an update from capital outlay. We met on February 13th. We had a joint meeting with the finance committee where the budgets for the Council on Aging, Recreation, Veterans, and were all presented, and those budgets were all approved. It was discussed that the town at that time was looking like they had an $800 and something thousand deficit on the townwide budget, which was a little concerning. So they were looking at all the departments to try to see where they could cut their operating budgets. For capital, as we know from our last meeting on February 7th, we being the school department, reduced our capital outlay plan, which is going to greatly assist on the capital side, because within capital outlay itself, there was about almost $1 million deficit there as well, with everybody's requests versus the amount of money that was available. So I don't know where everything's going to fully slate. The way that we're doing it in capital outlays, when we met with the finance committee, we asked everybody if there was any changes to their capital plans. We took all those, so we know here's their for instance, here's what they really need to have, and here's what they could drop if they had to drop something. So we're going to wait until the end. We have everybody, and we can look at everything, and we'll vote one capital outlay plan to go to town meeting at the end after we have all presentations. There's 2 capital outlay meetings this week. Wednesday, we are meeting to finalize the bylaw. We're looking to make bylaw changes. Right now, the bylaw governing capital outlay is very generic, so there's a lot of capital requests that come in that are like supplies for new hires, type thing. So we're looking to clarify what should be a capital request. It's probably going to be something that has a useful life for more than 1 year and more than X value. So it's true, capital items not something that, and some supplies do. Like if it's bulletproof vests for new police officers, like those would have a useful life of, I don't know how long they're good for, but more than a year. So it'll just kind of put more definition on it. So that's Wednesday night's meeting. Thursday night's meeting, we have another joint meeting with the Finance Committee, where more departments will be coming in to present their operating budgets and capital requests. So that will be an exciting time. If anybody's around Thursday night with nothing to do, come on down.
I wish I could be there.
And
Truly, wish I could be there.
but yeah, so that is all your updates from capital outlay. It's actually
Thank you.
really, I find it to be a very interesting process. The accountant in me is really, it's just really interesting to see which departments, where their budget is and how they're spending money. So I don't know. I'm actually really enjoying being on that subcommittee. So thank you guys for putting me there. And then that's it. I hope everybody had a wonderful vacation last week, and I hope everyone had a first great day back. Teachers, students, staff, and we'll buckle up and get ready to go into a long march.
Right. Anyone else?
I guess I just happy to hear about all the exciting things happening for our student athletes, and looking forward to working with our student advisory committee and seeing all the representation here tonight, so we can start to make some things happen. I am excited for a long march. It's my birthday month, my husband's birthday month, and it sounds like a lot of exciting things are going to be going on.
True.
Excited for the Aristocats. I have my own little Broadway cat who's been working really hard with Miss Cramp, and she always has wonderful performances, so it'll be a lot of fun. And looking forward to warmer weather as you see me all bundled up.
Great, thank you.
I hope everyone had a wonderful vacation. And to echo the sentiments, a great first day back. I know I did. I'm really excited to see the Aristocats and Cinderella. Drama at Carver is still like my heart. And looking forward to March, I guess. That's it. So, I mean, we were on vacation, so we didn't have any meetings with the committee, so.
Right. Thank you.
So I am also looking forward to the Long March. Lots of exciting things there. I do want to say congratulations once again to Molly O'Connor on her award. I think that is amazing, and we are extremely proud. I know it's kind of daunting coming up here to speak, so I'm glad she came in and did that. We have a diversity committee meeting tomorrow, so next meeting I should have hopefully something to report from that. And I do just once again want to reiterate, we need involvement in town. We need people to fill empty seats in committees and boards. So if you are interested in getting to know your community a little bit better and giving back, I highly recommend you take a look at any of those open positions. And please, please, please attend town meeting. April 11th? April 11th and 13th this year. And come and have your voices heard. And I'm glad everybody had hopefully a restful vacation. Mine was not. I have a very active, not a cat yet, but she will be next year, I'm sure. So thank you, appreciate it.
Excellent.
Kelly, that reminded me, thanks for saying that. I know that Finance Committee's open seats, and there's also an open seat on Capital Outlay if anyone wants to come join me at meetings.
Yeah. If numbers were my game, I might be there.
Right? I mean, filling those seats is so
When
so
everybody
important.
goes shopping, that's all Capital Outlay is, shopping for really expensive items for the town, like buses and
Oh,
concession
Right.
stands and
Police cruisers,
police cruisers
and fire trucks,
new
and
plows. And
right,
come on,
software.
It's just really expensive shopping for the town. That's all
Oh, should I quote you on that?
We'll see what Mr. Fennessy has
I
to
know,
do.
right?
Right?
Description.
Well,
maybe,
it's-
maybe we'll put that as the description in the bylaw.
You might get more members. Oh, goodness. So, Lily, not to put you on the spot, but do you have anything that you'd like to report? Okay, I know I kind of did put you on the spot, but you're more than welcome to. So, if you join us next time, if there's anything that you want to join, to add to our discussion or just to wrap up at the end, you're more than welcome to.
Yeah, at the end, it's kind of like a general time where you could share any thoughts or perspectives of you or your fellow students, anything you want
Yep.
us and the public to know. So,
Absolutely. So I also want to encourage people to get involved, fill seats. Please attend town meeting. The community and the district need your support. We need to hear your voices, so that when we make decisions, we're informed. So hopefully we will see a lot of people, and we'll be back in March before then. I'm so excited to see all the things that are on the calendar in March. If you look at that calendar and everything that's happening, March is going to fly by in a blink, even though there are no days off from school, because there are so many activities. So
there are a
I'm
few
so
half
thankful.
days.
I'm so thankful. Oh yeah, we have parent-teacher conferences coming up. Right, March 9th. So
Yeah, and
Yeah.
then the elementary is later too,
Yes,
right? Isn't that
elementary
2
is-
weeks after.
later in March, right? So anyway, so there's a lot happening. If you just keep look at the calendar, March will go by quickly.
Yes.
March 24 for elementary.
March 24th. Thank you, Colleen. So make sure you make those appointments if you have not already. And we'll see what Mother Nature brings for tomorrow. So stay tuned to your phones, is my advice. So with that, thank you, everyone. And congrats to all of our athletes and everyone that's out there still doing great things. And thank you for coming and sharing your stories with us. We love to hear from students and any opportunity that we have. So thank you for showing up. We appreciate it. So tonight is different. We need a motion to adjourn, but to go into executive session. So there's a different ending motion for today.
Okay. I will make a motion to adjourn from public session of the school committee and move to executive session to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel.
And not to return to public
open
session.
meeting.
Nice.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and we have a second. Any discussion? No. All those in favor?
Aye.
Actually, roll call vote?
Must be a roll
Okay,
call
roll call
vote
vote.
to go
It's been a while since we've done executive session, so roll call vote, please.
Katie Sullivan, aye.
Kelly Nemi, aye.
Jennifer Pratt,
Colleen Zanuski, aye.
Stephanie Clarity, aye. Thank you very much, everyone.
Mayor Jo.
Good night.